Good night, everyone doing tonight. God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Armin Spirit of God. I'm here to give you a word on tonight. Now we still talking about Abraham. Now the last time we talked about Abraham calling. God had called Abraham. He was living in a whole nother country. God said, I need you to come over here. Before he can get complete into Canaan, God had to show him first. After he showed him, then he allowed him to come on the land, which gonna be turned over to his offspring, to the Israelite. So Abraham gonna be tested. I just put out that Abraham always obeyed God. So now he about to be tested. Trusting God. Will you trust God in the mix of everything falling apart? You're overwhelmed. Your back is against the wall. Will you? I'm talking to myself too. Will you still trust God? But we're gonna see how Abraham gonna be. It's gonna come from Genesis chapter 22, 1 through 19. So Abraham had waited a long time, for a child. You remember Sarah couldn't have a child. She put her servant on Abraham, but that's not how what God had wanted. God wanted Abraham's wife to have the baby, not somebody else. So she couldn't have a baby until a long time, until the two angels told her by this time next year you're gonna have one. So a child. But God him to bring his promised child to the top of the mountain. So Abraham child, first child from his wife, would be the promised child. Gonna be his child, gonna be the promised child to bring a God plan to life. So Abraham, so God himself, so bring the promised child to the top of the hill, to be sacrificed. So Abraham don't understand. Nobody ain't gonna understand. Don't make sense. But we will see if Abraham will still trust God. So sometime later, God had tested Abraham. Now he said to Abraham, here I am. And he replied, so a test from God, not for Abraham to harm, his child, but to see if Abraham trusts him. See, God had just called him over there. So he is like one on God's servant. So God wanted to see if he really gonna trust. Cause see, he been obeying so far. So then God had said, a test from God is not Abraham to harm him, but to see if he trusts God. And so God has said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the hill. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain, and I will show you. So Abraham is being asked, to give up his son that him and Sarah was waiting for a long time to have. It was over 20 years they was waiting on a son. Now God has said, I need you to take your son, take him on that top mountain, and sacrifice your son. Abraham don't understand, but God. I just waited 20 years. But God, you show, and Abraham hardly asked too many questions, you know. And so Abraham is being asked to give up his son that he loved, the son from whom he would be great from this nation, that he would come according to God's promise. So early the next morning, Abraham had got up and he looked his donkey that he took with him, two of his servants, and his son Isaac. So when he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place that God had told him about. See, God always wants you to see it first. I'm about to get your house here, but I need you to see. I need you to see it first. Yeah, I need you to see it first. So Abraham obeyed God and took and took his son with him. Now Abraham had begun one of the greatest acts of obedience. Now he is very, very, very obedient. A very obeyed God. And this broke history. It broke history. Now he traveled between 50 and 60 miles to the mountain Jerusalem. So now Abraham Abraham had stated over the years, that he had learned that uh tough lesson. Now, he early on he had said, I learned about God's tough lesson. He said about the importance of being obeying God. Now this time is different. Now he's saying that God always give him instruction and stuff that he don't understand, but this time is different. He said it's different. So on the third day, Abraham had looked up and he saw the place from a distance. So Abraham had set out to obey without hesitation, acting in complete trust that God would intervene. Now he had said to his servant to stay here. Now he told it to his servant. It took them 3 days to get to where he needs to get to. So they there. But guess what? He told the servants, I need you to stay right here. Stay right here with these donkeys. I need you to stay right here. Because he said, me and my son will be back. For him to say, him and my son. Now, God told him, I need you to sacrifice your son. For him to know he's going to sacrifice his son, he already had faith. He already had faith in God because he told his son, look, I need you to watch my donkey. I need you to watch my supply because me and my son coming back. You know how the Terminator said, I will be back? Abraham said, I'm going to be back. Me and my son going to be back. So that means Abraham had faith. He believed, that God going to provide. So Abraham has said to obey without hesitation, acting in a complete trust, that God will intervene. Now he said to his servant, y'all stay here. You stay here. You watch everything. Watch everything because me and my son will be back. So Abraham tell his servants, that him and his son will be right back. Meaning he had trust God. He trusts God. Now Abraham had took the word from the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he said he carried out. So him and his son, they carrying all the tools and the woods of the fire. They carrying all that stuff. They carrying all stuff. So Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and he placed it on his son Isaac and himself, and carrying the fire, the knife, the two stones. He carrying everything with him. Now so Abraham had all he needed. He had all that he needed, but he ain't had no lamb, because, he's sacrificing his son. Now, he had no lamb but his son as a sacrifice, and he placed the wood on top of him. So he really about to do what God told him to do. So Isaac has spoke up. Now, this is a little boy. Now, he's seen everything that my father had. But Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, yes, my son. Abraham replied, the fire and the wood are here, Isaac. He said, but where is the lamb? So this is a little boy talk. Now this is a little boy. He's saying, what is the lamb? He said, where is the lamb? He said, I see the burnt offering. I see the wood. I see the knife. So he like, where's everything else at? So Isaac had walked it with his father, and he noticed, something was missing. So the boy is the wood, the fire. The boy said, "What, the wood, the fire, the knife?" But there was nothing. So Abraham had answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, and you, son, my son, and the two of them had went on together. Now, the only thing we can guess of, that God had wanted human sacrifice, because later on he would bring in his son for sacrifice. And so God will have his only son. Now he did this probably because later on God gonna have his only son to sacrifice. So God will have his own son to be sacrificed. And so he gonna tell his servant, I'm gonna be back. Me and my son gonna be back. So he had faith and he had believed that God gonna provide for him. And when they had reached the place that God had told him to go embrace the building, in an altar there, and arrange the wood on it, putting everything else on it, bind his son Isaac, and lay him on the altar on top of the wood. You know, now that'll be hard for anybody else. Put your child on top of the wood to be sacrificed. And something that waited for a long time. So Abraham mountain on shakable. So Abraham mountain and shakable trust in God's word. So Isaac represents God's promise to Abraham without Isaac. So there is no heir. No nation, no promise, and no blessing. If he would have killed Isaac, that would have killed God's whole plan. So we know that God was not gonna kill Isaac. So then he had reached out his hand and took the knife, slay his son. He was going to slay his son, and God had commanded Abraham to sacrifice his son, Isaac, the son that he loved, as a burnt offering. And Isaac's moment had come again. Now Abraham had confidence in God's goodness, power, that he was not hesitating. He did not hesitate at all. He saw the goodness of the power of God working. And he had a feeling that that God was gonna provide. He had a feeling that God was gonna provide. So, but the angels of the Lord had called out to him from heaven, Abraham, here I am, he replied. He said an angel had called out to him before he laid his hands on his son. Now he didn't hesitate at all. He had the knife like this, and he was gonna do this to his son until the angel had spoke out. Do not lay a hand on that boy. That he said, do not do anything to him, and now I know that you fear God. Now see, God told him, anytime you put your son on top of that, you willing to do it in, meaning you fear God more than anybody else. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to fear God more than anything. So he said, do not lay your hands on me. He said, do not do anything to this boy. Withhold from me your son, your only son. So God provide. God stepped in and he provide. It is difficult to let go of what you deeply love. Abraham was willing to surrender to his only son and trust him and provide. So Abraham had looked up. He liked this here. He trusted God. He trusted God. I trust you, God. You sent me up here for my son, but I trust you, God. My hand is up here by the duty, but I trust you, God. And so the angels came out right in time. And they had the Abraham Abraham looked up. He looked up and he looked around. There was a thick cloud that he saw ran covered by his horn. And he went over and took the ram, sacrificed as a burnt offering instead of his son. God was good. God was good and God was a provider. Abraham took a risk, because he had faith. He had faith. And he did not hesitate. He did not hesitate at all. And so God saw that he was not moving his hand. So Abraham had called that place, the Lord will provide. The place that was at, God called, Abraham called that place, God will provide. So the Lord will provide. Now we see that God had provide, God had provide, for him. It was a test. Abraham had trust God and God delivered a ram, to be sacrificed instead of the son. So God provided for Abraham. Abraham had trust God, and so Abraham had called that place the Lord provide. When he was about to ask his son, the angel said, look up, look up. God had provided. The ram is right there. Do not lay a hand on your son because I have provided. And so the goodness of God in protecting Isaac and providing a substitute so he would not have to die. Abraham had called that place the Lord provide because God had provided. The angel of the Lord had called to Abraham from heaven a second time. The angel had called a second time, do not slay your son. And they had more to say, but that's Abraham did not move a muscle. He had so much faith in God. So he said, I swear by myself, declared the Lord, that because, he have done this and have not withheld his son, your only son. So he swore by himself to confirm that his promises to Abraham. So I will surely bless you and bless your offspring. As you're numerous as the stars of the sky. So now God telling him, I'm gonna take care of your offspring. I'm going to take care of anybody that's in your bloodline. That you won't be able to count the stars. That's how many of your bloodline. Because see, the Israelites going to be 2 million. 2 million people that you won't even be able to count and keep up with it. Numbers at the stars in the sky, as the sand on the seashore, your deceiving will take possession of the city of their enemy. So Abraham had received abundance blessing because of his faith. God had promised to give Abraham or his offspring the ability to conquer their enemy. Now, even though your offspring, all the nation on the earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me. God says, since you obey me, all your offspring gonna be blessed. All nation gonna be blessed because of your faithfulness. Because of your faithfulness. You were very faithful to me. You fear God, and you was willing to do your son in who you waited for 20 years for. So God gonna give him double for his trouble. God said, the whole nation gonna be blessed because of you. Anybody standing next to you gonna be blessed. God had to up it up a little bit. Anybody standing next to you gonna be blessed. So God had promised to Abraham that your seed in the whole nation would be blessed through Abraham. Now, because Abraham had obeyed God and he also had trust God, God had blessed him all kind of ways. God blessed him in all kind of ways. Then Abraham had returned to his servant, and remember earlier, he left everything with the servant. Look, I need you to stay right here. I need you to watch all this stuff. Because you see that hill up there? Me and my son going up there. And guess what? We coming right back. Now, he done came right back. Because he had faith in God. He believed that God was going to provide for him. He believed that God wasn't going to let him hurt his son. So Abraham had returned to his servant, and said, set all together for Beersheba, and Abraham had stayed by Beersheba. Now, this is the end of the story of Abraham's obedience and his willingness, to sacrifice his only son that God had commanded. Abraham had seen God's goodness, power over and over. So he trusts that God has some good outcome in his mind. Now then Abraham had returned to his servants, and then they had set all together to Beersheba. Abraham had stayed there for a while. So this story Abraham involved God test Abraham faith. Many times that God will test our faith. So he said God will test Abraham's faith, and he passed through him trusting and obedience. And I'm talking to myself an inner one. God allowed I'm talking to myself, we have to trust God. We have to be obedient to his instruction. God gave Abraham instructions to follow, and he was very obedient to God. And so God was very pleased and blessed him all over. So remember, Abraham told his servant, to watch, watch the stuff that him and his son was coming back. And they came back because Abraham had faith. He had so much faith. Now God said, oh, you're going to there to sacrifice your son. But he get there by the servant and said, me and my son coming back. So I mean, he had faith. Before he went up there, he had faith. He believed that God was going to provide for him. Because he told his servant, we coming back. We coming back. I'm going up there and do something a little bit, but we coming back. And he came back because he had faith. He had believed that God was on his side. So that's all the words that I have for you right now. Y'all stay safe, and I'll see y'all on the next video.